Hi guys, what I'll be working on today is a dog, and I think he's a black retriever. So what I'm starting out with, I'm just gonna quickly mark in the light pink areas. And for that, I'm going to be using a little tiny bit of opera pink and some Quin violet and a little bit of my Winsor Newton dark gold, I think it's called, dark yellow. Let me look real quick. Yellow Deep. Winsor Newton Yellow Deep. Alright. I'm putting that on wet on dry because most of it is going to be covered with some a darker color. I think I'm going to probably use I think the Winsor Newton Indigo. And again, the same here. It's going to be covered with using some other colors over it, so that's just a base. And now I'm going to work on the eye, and I'm going to be using some burnt umber. And a little bit of burnt sienna. First, I'm going to use my Winsor Gold again, or dark yellow, and just I think for this I'm going to go ahead and wet the whole eye. Just plain water. And I'm going to be careful here around my little dots. I want to stay white. I'll just take a little bit of that and drop it in. Almost got it in my eyeshadows. I have to be careful there. Okay. I'm going to start with my lightest color here in the eye where the light hits it, which is just down here at the very bottom. Dropping that in. clean my brush off so that I can just use plain water right in this area. And now I'm going to use my burnt umber. And that's probably going to be just a little thicker mixture. And I'm going to go back to some water and let that soften that line up a little bit. You can see it needs a little further down here. And then at the very top, it's a little darker, so I'm just going to go ahead and use some of mine Payne's Gray. That looks a little bit too yellow, orangey to me, so I'm going to soften that up a little bit with just a light bit of the burnt umber. Now I'm just going to do his little eye. I don't really know what you call that, the wet area though of their eye. I can see just a tiny bit of pink here, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in first. And that's going to pull that out, so I have to wait until that's completely dry. I think I can go ahead and along the outside edge here. And that's again some wet on dry. And then I'm just going to wet my brush with clear water and smooth that out. And it's going to bleed a little bit there, but I can fix that in a little bit. I've spilled water somehow there, so I'm going to go ahead and get an extra paper towel. And one thing you can do in your area, especially if you're doing splatters and that type of thing, is, believe it or not, I wouldn't get the scented ones, but the puppy pads make a wonderful surface to paint on. If you splatter, it will absorb it, and of course they have plastic under them, and I've seen that used, and I think it's really great idea. And when I start splattering, that's probably what I'll use so that I don't get everything all over. But for this part, I don't really need to do that right now. Alright, so now I'm going to just do a little bit of my indigo. And I put some on my brush, but I'm going to, I also went and dipped it in water just because I just really want to get this, I don't want it to be too dark starting off. Right now I'm probably using too small of a brush, so I'm going to change. And I'm just leaving a little texture there, which is why I like rough paper so much for my pet portraits. And now I'm switching back to my neutral tint. Clear water again. I'm just going to pull this up in here because that only has a tiny bit of pink clear showing. And when I paint, I always flip my page around to wherever I feel like will give me the best direction for what I'm doing, like hair and fur and that type of thing. And I will come back in and define this more later. And I left a little bit of white there because that's definitely something that I'm going to want some white at. This again is my neutral tint. Come back here again with my indigo. And if you want it to look like texture and show the texture of the paper, you just, a lot of times I'll just hold my brush. This isn't a big enough one to really do it the way that I normally would with my other brush, I guess. So but you can see it creates a little bit of texture there. All right, so for this area, may wait on that a minute. Let that dry, because I'm going to erase this line a little bit because I want to do a like little, I might not have to. But I want his fur to show like through this area and this area for sure. So I'm just going to hold off on that a little bit. And we'll go ahead and do this little dark edge right here. Where his lip is showing. It's kind of just a real fine line. Darker around here on the edge. And again, I'm going to come in with just a clean brush and smooth that edge down. Ooh, that was a lot of water. So now I'm just going to leave that area for right now. Alright, and the brush I was using for the details was a size 0. It's Winsor & Newton Sable. I use Sable all the time. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I feel like it gives me the best result. So that's why I do that. Now I'm going to use my Billy Show size 4. And I'm just going to start coloring in the light parts of the dog. Actually, I think I might, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead. Sometimes I have to like figure out what exactly I want to do color-wise. But, so this is just going to be real watery. And I think I'm going to just drop the color in. I'm not sure. Hold on a minute. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to drop the color in. I'm just going to start putting in the light. And as you can see, I'm kind of holding my brush a little bit sideways, giving that texture. I like to leave some highlights in there because he actually does have highlights in that area. And then I'm going to drop a little bit of my neutral tint in here. And I drop it in a random pattern so that it just looks like fur. All right. Now I'm going to wait, and then I will go back in with some blue. It looks like a little bit of brown even maybe. I'll just use a real watery mix of my burnt umber. And I always want to make sure that I use the right direction on his face, so kind of right in here. I feel like that got a little bit stronger than I wanted it to be. So I'm just going to dab that off real quick. All right. Again, I'm just lightly brushing it on, keeping some texture in there. So I probably had a little bit more water than I would have liked to right then when I put the brown on, which is no problem because I can go over that again with a little thicker mixture. So we basically want to keep it like a little bit lighter, thicker, and not so watery for... It'll be fine. The texture is still there, so in your paper, so that works out. It's not like a disaster or anything. All right, and this is, I was trying to figure out how I hold it. So this is how I hold my brush to do the my little sideways sweep. And I want to get the direction of the hair in. And then if I want to knock that down some, I just rinse my brush. Don't have a whole bunch of water in it. And then you just kind of can smooth it down by, and you don't lose that texture. Which, especially where his hair is kind of going around here, I want to keep that. And now I'm going to just put a little bit of my blue again. Here. Excuse me. And I'm switching to my neutral tint. This has a weird hair on it. And I'm just going to put a little bit over that, not much. I want it, don't want to mess up the brown under there. I want it to be a little bit textured. And again, rinsing off my brush, dabbing it on my paper towel just to smooth that out a little bit. I know most people just paint theirs right in. It's just something different that I do. I don't know. I think I have almost like a fear of it because it's so covered, and this is just sort of like the technique that I've come up with, I guess. Let's do a little pink through here. Again, rinsing my brush and just knocking it down a little. I don't want to put it in there yet because that's pretty wet still. Let's get quite a bit of blue here in this area. Again, wetting my brush, clear water, and just, I don't know what that was. Blending that, knocking the hard edges off, basically. And I just keep referring to my picture and trying to put the color where it's supposed to go. And it never hurts to just pick it up and look at it and make sure that, you know, you're getting the shading in where it's supposed to be. And this is a shadow right along here. So I'm going to use my neutral tint again. It comes out. And that doesn't bother me because it's quite a defined line there with a real wide edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave that. Well, I just knocked it down. All right, I'm not going to leave it. There's a little bit of blue here, but it's mostly dark, so I'll leave that darker. I just like to kind of, I guess, color black this out a little bit is what I feel like it's doing for me. That way I know where my shadows are, and where I want it to be light. I do this sometimes to indicate the hair direction. Just kind of dab it on. Starting to make just a little bit of hair here. Nothing too extreme yet. And there's always this, I mean, like right now I'm just like, oh my god, this looks terrible, but it'll be fine. I don't know about everyone else, but I always have a point where I feel like, oh my god, this is not going to turn out. It's still too wet for me to do. Almost dry enough. Not quite though. Because I got that wet, it blends up in there nice. And there's a dark line there because that's part of his mouth. That's too wet right there. And in general, I like to paint flat, but sometimes I want to pick it up and make sure that I'm getting the shadows and everything where they're supposed to go. Okay, and I made that a little dark than what I want. So I'm just going to dab it off. Go back and try it again after it. Kind of lost my pink over here in his mouth area. I'm going to go ahead and put that back in a little bit. So now I think I'm going to start working on the I think I'm going to use some indigo here. Working on his neck fur. And I just want to define it, so I'm going to bring these colors up in. Get that pretty dark, which is fun. Now to smooth that down and keep it looking furry there, I'm just going to take my brush and lightly go over. I'm just going to drag some of that darker color up in. And I'll go back in and do more of that in a little bit. That's kind of why I prefer pan paints. They are, they're easier to control color-wise or wetness-wise and everything than wet paint. And I'm using quite a bit of water for this.